We did a Mackenzie Mgbako in the portal breakdown. I want to say a couple weeks ago now at this point. One of the quieter portal recruitments
Yeah.
for a former five-star kid. But there's some updates here, courtesy of friend of the program, Jeff Goodman, Goodman Hoops, who was on the field of 68 yesterday with him and Rob Doster doing portal updates. And Goodman shared that there are two schools that are in the best shape for Mackenzie Mgbako. And that would be NC State and Kentucky. This comes as a little bit of a surprise to me as far as Kentucky's involvement, just because normally Kentucky involvement is very loud. Like everybody
Yeah.
else that Kentucky's really after here in the portal, it's like an aggressive pursuit that's going to be wrapped up one way or the other pretty quickly. Mackenzie's just been quietly in the portal, kind of dragging along, and Will Wade needs players. And oh, wait a second, Kentucky's still in the mix here? I was surprised by this update. Ralph, you're a North Carolina resident. You've got a pulse on what's going on with NC State a little bit too. Are you surprised by these two schools being the two that have emerged for Mr. Mbako?
I'm not surprised with NC State. There is a massive opportunity for a big role there. They need players. They need front court players. I think Mgbako would be more likely to play probably his more natural four position in an up-tempo system that Will Wade wants to play. Like to me, that screams good fit, especially if he's promised a pretty big role and to be one of maybe not the go-to guy, but one of the go-to guys offensively for NC State. That makes a lot of sense to me. And if I'm Ibaka, that makes a lot of sense if particularly if I'm buying into what Will Wade is selling with NC State and what this program can be. Will Wade made no punches at his introductory press conference. He basically promised that they're making the tournament this year, not the ACC tournament that NC State missed,
I
the
love Will
NCAA
Wade.
tournament.
I just want to get that on record. Love Will Wade.
He is so perfect. He was talking about how UNC and Duke are going to be looking at NC State in a couple of years, wanting to be them as opposed to the reverse. He is so perfect for the Wolfpack. So if you buy into that and believe that, and there's a role for you, it's hard for me to imagine a more perfect spot for Mbako. But Kentucky, it's a bigger program, perhaps comes with a better payday, and maybe that's why things have kind of been dragging. I assume there's a number that one side like here's our offer, take it or leave it, and it kind of sits there. But he fits what Mark Pope wants to do in terms of a stretch four who can shoot the three and be versatile, do some things off the balance with the ball in his hands as well. That fit from a system makes sense as well. And going from Indiana to Kentucky, you're maintaining your profile in terms of the program you're playing for. So that makes sense too.
So, two good options as you laid out two different things. You go to Kentucky, I think you're on a national title contender on a team with a bunch of veteran portal guys that you're excited about playing with in an offensive system that we all believe is really fun to play in and just great for everyone who gets to be a part of it. Look at how many guys that portaled in last year in Pope's first year that had some form of career years. Like I would say almost everybody that played at least looked better on a bigger
Yeah.
stage than they have previously, even if they didn't have insane numbers. But Otega always a guy who like he was a completely different guy. He turned into a
Yeah.
superstar on the wing at Kentucky, and they're not similar players in many ways, but similar positionally in the hope that maybe a five-star kid could have a career year on the wing in a Mark Pope system. Then you've got NC State where I think like somebody's got to just like pair themselves with Wade and bet on it and see what
Yep.
happens. And somebody will. I don't know who it will be. Will Wade's involved in it seems like a lot of recruitments right now, just sort of trying to get whatever big fish he can. You know, they're in the mix for Ian Jackson. We've got an update on him as well that we're going to push today. So, it kind of feels like, hey, just get the best available and figure it out later. I will say this as someone that watched Mackenzie at Indiana a lot, I think these are kind of the two polar opposite extremes in terms of landing spots.
Yeah.
And I sort of wish he would find somewhere in the middle because I'll be real about it. If he goes to Kentucky, I think he gets lost in the shuffle and just quite frankly won't be good enough to give them what they need and they'll turn to other options. Like the issue with him is he's like a pure shooter that hasn't necessarily shot it fantastically at
Mhm.
times that doesn't give you anything else. And like to me, if you're making the case, what is it at Kentucky? Is it like, hey, come be Ansley Almanor? Isn't that the comp from last year's team? Like, you're not asking Mackenzie Mgbako to be Kobe Brea. Otega always playing all the wing
Right.
minutes.
I think the idea, if I'm Mgbako committed to Kentucky, I think that is a sign that I am committed to winning. There's a lot of,
He's
talk.
not. I'll tell you
I
right now, that's not who he
that
is.
seems to be right. That seems to go counter to how things were at Indiana. Um, but I think it's safe to say that Indiana as a whole was a mess the last 2 years under Woodson. Mgbako had to play out of position, and maybe there's some with how quiet it has been, maybe a bit of a reality check in terms of where you're at in the college basketball landscape. In the best case scenario, who's to say he can't play the Andrew Carr type role? Best case scenario at Kentucky.
So
I don't
different though.
so
But
different. I don't think that happens, but I think like if you're Mark Pope, I think you're looking at potentially that kind of role if this works out. If it doesn't, then yeah, you can play him in the Ansley Almanor where he starts a handful of games, then he gets a DMPs and a couple others, right? You can find ways to use that shooting if you're Mark Pope. But to me, like the difference, you go to Kentucky, you're not going to Kentucky for a role. You're going to Kentucky to contribute to winning. And so
yeah.
him going there would to me indicate that he is maybe matured a little bit, or at least got a little bit more serious about his college basketball career.
Or maybe the flip, you're going there for the brand. Like, let's not act like you only go to Kentucky just to win. You go to Kentucky to like put on the Kentucky blue and be on television and
Well, then
Big Blue
why would you
Madness.
not stay at Indiana?
Because that's a shit show, to be honest, right now. Like, they got two
That is
players.
true.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, look, I don't mean to crap all over Mackenzie Mgbako because I've actually defended the kid a lot, and I think I'm higher on him than a lot of people are in Big Ten circles. I also was an Indiana believer in ways that many weren't, and I turned out very wrong for that. So I think Mackenzie Mgbako can contribute to a winning team. I thought at times he was one of the better players on Indiana. It's also a reality that when Mike Woodson moved away from Mackenzie Mgbako, the team got a lot better. He stopped playing politics. He stopped just giving into who I think the highest paid players were on the team, and the team got really better with Anthony Leal and Luke Goody playing bigger roles. The issue for me with Mgbako, he's a shooter, he's a sniper, he's a volume score type that can't shoot. And he can shoot, but he's made 32% from three both seasons in college. There's just not a lot of use for a guy who's just a shooter that shoots 32% from three. Mark Pope will feel the same. Like the hope is if you get Mackenzie Mgbako, he snipes 40% of his threes out of nowhere. But that would be a different guy that I'm not saying that's impossible in a Mark Pope system, but it would be a surprise. It's also confusing to me. I understand I'm laying the case why this won't work at Kentucky, but like it's confusing to me after Kentucky has added Diabate, who's a similarly shaped player that does make threes, and they got what's his name? Cam Williams, who's also 6'8" on the wing, sniper. Like, how many more 6'8" wings that are just there to shoot are you going to build? You mentioned Andrew Carr. Andrew Carr was at least like a post player that could moonlight at the five. Mackenzie Mgbako, to me, struggles to even fit a position between the three and the four. He's not a defender. So to me, you've already got better options at the position. As long as you have a Otega where you're still not looking for like an alpha type. I just think it would be a horrible fit for all parties. And quite frankly, I think that's part of why it's been a quiet recruitment. I think Kentucky people know this. And he's not the biggest
Yeah.
priority recruitment. I would guess Kentucky's a little bit surprised that it's coming down to them in NC State.
I think that's the case as well. But I also think that we had conversations 2 years ago when Mgbako committed to Indiana about how it was going to work because he wasn't really a three. He was more of a four.
Yeah.
But you had the big guys there, and you kind of had to have him play the three out of necessity. And they put him some of the four this year and with rotations and how those worked. But he was still mostly like a perimeter guy, more than a post guy. And we had talked coming out of high school that that was not the best use for his game. I think if Kentucky is serious about this, and I think he is more a backup option for them than anything else. But if he lands at Kentucky, or Kentucky gets more serious about it, I think it's with the intention of moving him to being more of a post guy and being more of a true four who can step out, as opposed to somebody who is a face up four who can play some in the post.
That's a good point. I could see that. Look, I have no doubt. anyone Mark Pope gets his hands on, I think he's going to help optimize and figure out. I just really struggle to see what the need is here from a Kentucky standpoint. Like if I were an advisor to Kentucky, I'd be like, this isn't a take at this point after what we've already gotten.
Depth is a luxury.
Right. Now, at the same time, though, I talked about extremes. That's one extreme. A team that I think the roster's too good for, loaded at the position. Why do you need this? Flip to NC State. Can we not find somewhere that's a little more solidified in what their identity is than Will Wade's first year be the alpha? Like that roster is completely empty right now. It might work, who knows? But to me, the two ways that Mackenzie Mgbako's junior season is a fail is if he goes somewhere he's not good enough to play, which I think would be Kentucky, or if he goes somewhere that he's asked to do everything and he can't do everything, and that team's going to really struggle. Like, why are these the only two options at this point? Is there any world where NC State works out better than I'm teeing this up as?
Yes. Short answer is yes. I am going to do the things I need to do so that this doesn't get clipped because I do not want this to be what this comes out to being. Um, I think you could compare the idea of Mgbako, again, the idea, to Naz Reid. Best case scenario, the idea of Mgbako to Naz Reid. And who was Naz Reid's college coach? Will Wade at LSU. And so I think if you're Wade and NC State and Mgbako, you can see him filling that kind of role, right? And Naz Reid played no defense. The LSU team played no defense for Will Wade. And so Mbako's defensive concerns don't come into play there because he just kind of deal with it. But Naz Reid had more of the offensive game, and Mgbako, again, you hope getting him out of Indiana helps with some of that stuff, and he shows more than he did in Indiana, stuff that he showed in high school. But I think that's like what the idea would be, with him filling that sort of Naz Reid kind of role.
Okay, I love the Nas reach out. You've talked me in a little. Like
Which
you've
is
talked me into at least saying if these are the two options, I hope it's NC State because now I can see a path forward where it works. But um, yeah, outside of the comp to Nas Reed, who I also just think was like flat out a lot better than Mackenzie Mgbako,
yes,
um,
yes.
I'm not sure I see the vision. I just
That's why I didn't want it to get clipped.
right. I think my thing is this, as someone that I people probably won't believe it based on how this conversation's gone. I have a genuine rooting interest for this kid. Like I want to see him be good. I feel like
Yeah.
everyone involved at Indiana the last 2 years has been done somewhat dirty by how messy that entire situation was with the coach, with how Indiana's administration handled that, firing him in the middle of the season. It flipped everyone's roles. It just left everyone in flux. I believe there's a talented player here. And to me, the ideal landing spot for him would just be somewhere that has maybe a winning infrastructure around him that needs like a third scorer on the wing,
Yeah.
shooter to plug in. And to me, you're not plugging in either one of these. It's like it's the Mackenzie Mgbako show, or there is nowhere to be plugged into in Kentucky. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll prove me wrong and do that at Kentucky, or maybe he'll just be awesome at NC State. I don't know. I'd like to see it happen, but as someone who is rooting for this, I think I'm a little frustrated. These are the two options. Do you think it's going to be NC State? Because to me, I'd be surprised if he actually commits to Kentucky at this point. So I'll predict NC State.
That would be the way I would lean right now.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see where this goes. You have a miniature Ralph crystal ball to work with, folks. We'll have more content on the portal every single day. Go subscribe to Sleepers Media to see it all.